Quarterly. Thank you for coming. We're so glad you are here. Today we're going to look at storytelling and how that can help us deal with our trauma. And we're going to feature the name of the presentation is here, Stories of Resilience and Their Healing Powers. It features Story Fruition, and Melissa Reeves is the CEO and founder of Story Fruition, and also a best-selling author of Storyteller's Mind Movie. We're also featuring our own Snohomish County Health Department's own Jamie Robb, who is a healthy community specialist. We'd like to ask you to hold your questions to the end. You can definitely put them in the chat, but we'll go back to them at the end of our presentation. And also feel free to make comments to the storyteller, like, wow, that's so cool, or, you know, great job, or that's really will be great if you can do that. So feel free. You also will be getting a couple of evaluations after the program, and please complete them. You will it can kind of prompt you to possibly think about your own stories. So, and then there's another one from the health department. So without further ado, let's get going.
Great. And everyone can see the screen okay? Can I see a thumbs up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So we're going to place a little bit of music and get warmed up, moving right into a story, but I'm very excited and honored to be a part of your day today. Thank you. So let's go. Can you hear it? Let's do a refresh. Oh, it's okay. I think the music just went out, but that's okay. Here we go. There we go.
I'm 5 years old, sitting on my grandfather's lap, and we're reading our favorite book together. It's Gray's Anatomy, the #1 anatomy textbook for medical students worldwide. I've got hearts in my eyes as I look up at my Dada. He looks down at me and says, "You're going to be a doctor someday, just like me, aren't you?" "Yes, Dada, I am." The wheels are in motion. My educational trajectory is fast-tracked and propelled into a track towards medicine. In middle school, I'm taking high school courses. In high school, I'm done taking advanced college courses. I'm 18 years old, about to start my college career living in the Big Apple, when I get a phone call. "Hello? Dada's died." "What?" My father looks at us and says, "We all have to move back to Bangladesh now." Before I know it, I'm standing in 118 degrees sweltering heat in the middle of my all-women's college campus in Bangladesh, this time clutching my very own Gray's Anatomy, when I'm tripping over chickens and goats. In New York City, I would have been eating this off a halal chicken and rice cart. "Dada, where are you? What is this? Where am I?" My world is upside down. I'm too skinny because I can't eat the food. I can't communicate with my peers. I'm struggling just to survive. The only thing that brings me comfort is my education. So I dive in deep. One of my professors recognizes my ambition and says, "Wow, you just timed 16 minutes and 30 seconds for this C-section. No one's ever done that before." I was on a roll. In my free time, I founded an internationally award-winning community project that serves free antenatal care to slum-dwelling women all over Bangladesh. My work was awarded on an international stage by the United Nations in 2014. I'm 23 years old and in my final year of medical school, and love is the last thing on my mind. A man that I met 6 years earlier finds me halfway across the globe. He asks my father if we can go on a date. "Sure, if you marry her." "Okay, can I have some time to think about this?" "Yeah, I'll give you 15 minutes." That was on a Wednesday. By Friday evening, we were married. That road showed up pretty quickly, but I took it and I never looked back. The beginning of the road is rocky, filled with uneven potholes, long distance troubles, but I'm thriving in my surgical career. 2 years go by and it's time for me to move back to New York City to be with my husband. The road gets rockier. I was a superstar surgeon in Bangladesh, but in order for me to practice surgery in the States, I had to pass the United States medical licensing exams. On paper, I just look like a high school graduate. I'm mopping floors at my first job in America at a Subway sandwich shop. And all I can think about is this exam. To me, it's like this enormous fire-breathing dragon. I'm terrified. The heat of studying for this exam is melting my armor. I finally get my test results back. And it's not what I expected. I missed it by one question. Now what am I going to do? My paths just changed again. Hello, sunny Florida. I'm 26 years old, living with my in-laws, trying out different careers, and nothing makes me feel worthy. Until this opportunity for health insurance. Health insurance, they never taught this in medical school. I grab it and I dive in deeper. In my second week of training, I'm handed this medical underwriting guide. Amy, training next to me, is Googling and looking up terminology like cholecystectomy. It's cholecystectomy, resection of the gallbladder, indicated in cholelithiasis in some cases of chronic cholecystitis. It's like I'm reading Grey's Anatomy again, and I'm fluent in this language. And that's when I knew that my road just merged into my path. My medical career, my understanding of global healthcare systems, and now my experience in health insurance were now coming together to create the new Dr. Noor Healthcare Advisor, my very own personal brand. Since then, I've reinvented the customer experience journey for purchasing health insurance. Using my insider's lens, I work with trailblazing entrepreneurs and help them access quality, customizable health plans. The value that I bring to the table is my clinical know-how, so I can instantly evaluate what coverage you need, and sometimes more importantly, what you don't. I've traveled on many roads less traveled, but I have always trusted in myself that I'm going to figure it out. And that's the richness of life.
Okay. So I don't know why the screen was all messed up like that, but there you go for technology. It happens. But that is what we would call a story fruition. That is her journey, and what we're trying to do in storytelling is to have you as the listeners see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, and touch it. And there was all sorts of elements going on in that story of this woman's journey. And in many ways, it was traumatic. It was a traumatic event when Dada died. All right, their entire world turned upside down. A second traumatic event was when she failed the medical exam for the United States. I mean, she was literally mopping floors. Here's a woman that was on the stages of the UN winning awards for her work, and now she's mopping floors in New York City, and she can't get over that exam and how painful it was to approach it, and then to fail it was quite a hit. In fact, when we were working together, we would get blocked by the fact that she just still couldn't get over that she had failed the exam. It was still hurting her inside. And so we came up with the metaphor of the dragon slaying, the dragon breathing and melting her armor. We needed to create that metaphor for her so that she was able to get through it. She was like, okay, I can do that. And then she was able to go, hello, sunny Florida. And then she was able to keep going with her journey. There's also in that story a lot of time travel too. But if you guys want to put any comments of what you saw or what were things that stood out for you, please do, because again, our chat is our way of doing some group conversation and group learning. Okay, so we love chat participation. All right, thank you. So we're going to be looking at this crazy art form called storytelling. And over here at Story Fruition, we like to call it mind movie making. So my book, The Storyteller's Mind Movie, is all about that, because I see so many people on a daily basis in their careers struggle with how do you tell your story? You know, what stories do I tell? When do I don't tell stories? When do I stop? How much do I tell? How much, how I'm always vague. I always feel like I'm vague and people aren't engaging with me. Well, that might be happening, but guess what? It's trainable. And that's why we're here today, to really look at this differently, because we are telling stories all day long. And you all are training and learning and telling stories of very high emotional stakes. And so I'm honored again to be here. And I look forward to more interactions with you. So these are the things that we're going to be going over. First, your audience, knowing who your audience is. Now, with Dr. Noor, her audience, she wrote that for a lot of media interviews, right? Because people were like, wait a second, you were a doctor and now you're a health insurance salesperson? How did that happen? Well, it took us 3 months to piece her life together in all of those different scenes that you saw so that she could tell the story in a much more compelling way, all right? And to really share who she is as a human, as a wife, as a daughter, and as a granddaughter. So we want to know who our audience is, because depending on who your audience is how much you know what to share or what not to. We're also going to talk about the neuroscience of what goes on and why storytelling is so imperative, especially if you're in a situation with your work where you're going to be doing presentations, perhaps, and you got to show some charts and graphs. We're going to highly encourage, and you'll see why storytelling is going to help you in that realm. We're going to talk about the difference between a wound story and a scar story, and how to craft these into the mind movie that you're going to start seeing. Okay, so as you watch these, pay attention to what's happening in your own imagination. Like, did anyone see the chicken cart, the halal chicken cart when she talked about it in New York? Did you see the Grey's Anatomy book in her arms? Could you feel the 118-degree heat when she was finding herself back in Bangladesh? You were. That's the thing. Many of you might have been like, oh, I guess I was. After today, you're going to start noticing how much is really going on inside when you've got a mind movie going. Then we're going to hear from Jamie Robb, who has a beautiful story that we did at a showcase. We've had the honor of working with the Snohomish County Health Department now. We're now moving into our 3rd quarter together, and Jamie was in our showcase last month. And so we will play her story and do an interview. Then you will see, if you're interested in this work, what does a keynote look like? And so I'm going to show a story that's actually done by me, and you will be able to watch for visuals. Then we're going to give you a story prompt. Let's see what you get, okay? And we'll talk about it. But we want you to walk away today with like, I've got more stories than I realized I had before. And then we have some free resources for you, okay? So that's going to be our day. Is everyone, can I have a thumbs up from people whose cameras are not on? Let's see a thumbs up. Are we ready? Okay, awesome. Okay, so it's about the audience. I started acting at the age of 9. All right. But my entire career was in sales and marketing and publishing and print and advertising technology and nonprofits. And I've had a very robust career. But in my role, I was always responsible to be a storyteller, to give vision stories, to tell stories of hope, to tell stories of customer success stories, if you will, because I was more in the corporate world. But we've got to know our audience, and an actor only cares about the audience. That's all we care about, is that we want you to escape your busy day, your stressful life, and come in and watch our show. That's what we do. However, we're talking to our constituents more than we are sitting in a theater, right? So how can we take that conscientiousness of what an actor is really doing to entertain us and bring it into our professional lives? And we do that by being keenly aware of the fact that when we are presenting and when we are telling a story or a case story maybe, that you are literally putting images in your audience's head. It's that powerful. You are causing us to feel it, smell it, taste it, and touch it. And when you really realize that, it's really fun to start playing in there. If you're not realizing that, then you may be doing what most people do when they're telling stories. They're kind of vague. They're kind of bland, even. And what happens is that the audience has to work a lot harder, because if you say, when I was a little kid, I knew that I wanted to be in public health. Okay, right away. How old were you? Were you 6? Were you 12? Were you 18? And why does that matter? Because to the audience, we want to imagine you at 6. And if that was your first moment. But at 6, we're going to be relating to you too. We're going to be remembering what it's like to be at 6 years old, or how it was to be 16 years old. We will be relating to you more than you realize. So that's, again, a conscientious moment of setting the time frame. And I'll get a little bit more into that when we start crafting these stories and how we break it down. But let's always be conscientious of the audience. Okay. This is what happens when we are looking at graphs and charts. And I know that you're scientists and you're working in public health, and there's stats, there's studies, and you've got to look at all of this. But the numbers are only igniting the neocortex of our brain. And it's a very unemotional moment when the brain is looking at a graph or a stat, or even hearing a number. It's just a number. It's a non-emotional thing. But when we start to look at a graph and look at the numbers that it's representing in humans, okay, then we start igniting the limbic system of the brain. And what happens there is it's not rational and logical like neocortex is. It's emotional. It's not even really what I'm in my work, that I'm in my research. It's not even paying attention to the words you're saying. It's the images that you're drumming up. And that's what's launching neurotransmitters. And especially in the work that you're doing, oxytocin is a very powerful neurotransmitter, as you know. And if you are in a situation where you really want to open up the hearts of your audience so that they can hear the power of those numbers that you're going to be discussing, then telling a story at the very, very beginning, before you even flash any charts or numbers, is the smartest thing that you can do as a presenter. All right. But if you're one-on-one with your constituents and you're working with people, helping them find the ways to tell their story so that their message can be brought out will also, for their audience, start creating the neurotransmitter release. So it's like biologically important to become a really good storyteller if you really, really want your message to be heard. I always say it's an essential skill in communication to be a really good storyteller. All right. And that's what we're doing. We're making a mind movie. All right. So we're seeing it, but that's what's happening in your audience. So everyone was seeing something when we were listening to Dr. Noor. Now we want to talk about something that's really important. Wound stories versus scar stories. Okay. So I kind of pointed out that there was a wound still going on with Dr. Noor. It would still hurt her. She could barely even face that she did not pass that exam. and we had to find that metaphor for her. But overall, she was able to tell this story because a scar story means that time has done its job. All right. It means that gold, the wisdom that that event caused in your life changed you. And if it still hurts, you're probably still in the wound. And maybe your story is still told most intimately to a counselor or your closest family members. It's not really totally ready for public consumption. But if you do have stories and you're like, no, if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't be who I am today. And these are the 3 things I learned from it. And I want to share that story because it makes me feel as though I can connect to other humans and help them not feel so alone in a similar situation. That's a scar story. All right. So I oftentimes in my work, I just had one today, actually. I was working with someone, they're doing a business pitch. They have an idea for an app, and they were talking about their own PTSD that happened. And I had to go very careful with them. I was like, okay, this only happened a year ago when you were at a shooting at the Gorge. Okay. Very traumatic. And so we had to be very careful with how we would position that because it was actually the impetus for her business idea to help people with PTSD still be able to go to outdoor concerts. Beautiful idea, absolutely beautiful idea. But we were wavering on, is this a wound or is this a scar? And pretty much it's a wound. However, this business idea might turn it into a scar, right? It could be a part of her healing process. The Storyteller's Mind movie was actually inspired, my book was actually inspired by another person who started a business based on loss. He lost his mentor who was going to teach him how to be a search and rescue professional. He had a heart attack, died right there in the woods, right before his 15-year-old eyes. And the reason why he died was a helicopter couldn't get the basket down to save Don, his mentor, because the winds were blowing so hard. And when he got older, he was talking to his professor, because he's now in college and he's studying medicine. And he's like, "Why are you studying medicine, Caleb?" And he told him the story of this loss. And the professor puts down his coffee and says, "You fix that." What? Fix that. That whole basket waving thing. You got engineers at this university, figure that out. And so he did. And he created a company called Vita Inclinata. And it is now a drone company that helps helicopters and ships and anything where they're lugging big things around that the wind could bother. They're now stabilizing it with drone technology. So there is another opportunity where we had this incredible wound. Time came in, it became more of a scar, but then he could take that idea and bring it out to the world. And now today, I always joke, I'm like, you are still a search and rescue professional. You just wear a suit more often. And he's like, it's true. And he's all over the planet now working on this because of that traumatic event. So we never know what the gift of a traumatic event really could be, but it's in your power to write that story. Write it how you want, rewrite it if you need to, but get it out so that you can feel your own healing and you can heal others with it too. All right, now we're going to get into the core, and you can take notes, whatever you want, but when we're starting to craft a story, first off, we want to know what stories are we telling? Which one do you need? Many of you already know I've got my story. I'm very aware of it. But to really make it impactful, this is the number one rule. You want to show us, not just tell us. Okay. And so, Dr. Noor could have basically have done a tell. It would have been, well, I started off in medicine and I was really good at it. I won a few awards, and then my grandfather died and I had to go back to India and it was sad. And then I didn't pass the exam. I mean, she could have told it like that. That would have been telling us, but instead she showed us everything. She had her Dada talking to us. She had her father talking to her future husband. I mean, we got pulled into those moments with her. just by the fact that she was following the next steps. She was showing us and not just telling us. And this is the mind movie method right here. Okay. So this actually, Crow is an improv tenant. So on top of all the other things I do, I'm actually a professional actor and improviser. And we learn this in improv. Even though we are making up stories on the fly, we do have our own core elements that we're all trying to hit. And it's this: the characters, the relationships, the objective, and the where. And I'm going to break those down for you right now. Okay. Obviously, in a story, you're in it. It's your story. It's your moment. So you're a character in it. And other people join you. Okay. They join you, and that means you have a relationship with them. You're either strangers, or you could be great friends. You might be family members. And we've got to see what your relationship is like so that we feel it. So an example could be, when I came home, my mother said, "Come in here and sit down." What's the relationship in that moment? Versus when I came home, my mother was really angry, right? That's telling. But showing is when the character actually can come alive and show us what's going on. And now we're edutaining the audience, okay? So you may not think that you're a natural born actor, but guess what? Everyone does have a little bit. In fact, I would love in chat if you had theater at all in your career, from middle school to high school to college. Let us know. Just if you did theater, was it college? Did you do theater after college? That's awesome. You probably are already one of the better storytellers in your field. Okay. But if you didn't, that's okay too, because it's still in you. There's still that ability to create a character and let us see them talk. And when you do that, it's the game changer. It takes a 2D event and it makes it a 3D event for the mind movie when you can step into the scenes a little bit more. So you have characters, you have relationships, and then objective is, what's the point? Why are you telling this story? And that means you have stakes. So you've got to know your stakes of your story. You need to know, like, is it sickness or is it health? Is it life or is it death? Is it rich or is it poor? But there's always a transition. And so at the beginning of the story, with Dr. Noor, which is the story we've seen so far, she's at the beginning 6 years old and innocent and excited about her career to be a doctor, right? But by a certain point, she's depressed. So there's transition happening. So she's lost her dream. But then she comes back and she finds a new path when she said, "My world all came together at that time. My medical history, my knowledge of global health systems, and the insurance terminologies and how I can help a customer." Okay. But still, it was trauma for her. And finally, we have the where. And so this is the most, I love the where because it's actually multi-dimensional. So when you're starting a story, you want to paint where you are physically. So again, we had Dr. Noor saying, "I'm 6 years old and I'm sitting on my Dada's lap and we're holding a book of Gray's Anatomy." We can see it. She didn't say I was in the living room. She could have. Or she could have said, "I'm sitting on the leather couch in my grandfather's living room." That would be another way that she would set up for the conscientiousness of her audience where she is. Now, we also know where she is in life because she says it right away. "I'm 6 years old." Okay. We all start relating. I kind of went over that. And then where are you in your story? Mentally, spiritually, or maybe physically, So how old are you? And like, where are you? Are you happy? Is everything great at the beginning of the story? And then the inciting event happens? Because that's normally what happens when we're with Story Fruition, we're doing full workshops. We actually, and we've done this with the Snohomish County Health, we show the hero's journey. And then we show them how to incorporate Crow. So the hero's journey is a wonderful, easy way to follow a structure for a story. And if anyone's interested, also in the chat If you are, we would be more than happy to send you out we have a little hero's journey map, and you can kind of get that structure. I didn't put it in this particular deck, but just let us know, just write hero's journey and we'll know who wants to have it. Okay, great. But what happens is that when you have your story, we don't go right to the inciting event, the trauma of what happened. Okay, you start your life off as you're just having maybe a normal day. Okay, you're just having a normal day, and when you watch Jamie's story, watch for this. She's having a normal day, and then she gets some news, and because of that news, a series of events happen. Because of that, this happened. And because of that, that happened. Until one day she realizes something. She gets her aha moment to find her way into public health. All right. And after she got to that, I mean, we're always living our stories. They constantly keep going. But she comes to the point where she understands who she is more. And she wouldn't be who she is today if that big event that you're going to learn about in just a minute hadn't happened. Okay. So your life is normal, then something happens, and because of that, something happens. Because of that, something happens. Maybe there's even one more. And then you get your aha, like, oh, light bulb's on, I just changed. And now you're not the same. You've grown, you've expanded. And because of that, you are now at a different level in life. Okay? And you keep going, and next thing you know, you start it again. You're just having a normal day when something happens. Someone says something, a news story hits. There's a million things that can create an inciting event. But instead of them being horrible, as they become, at first they're a wound, but then they can become a scar when you find the gold. And senses. Okay, so we were doing a lot of that. And every time you incorporate the senses, so obviously when you're describing the room and you can see the Grey's Anatomy book and you can imagine her little kid sitting on her grandpa's lap. Okay, that's our sight. But then when he says, you're going to be a doctor too, that was her first move of sound. Okay. And all of these, when these are activated, these are when the neurotransmitters really start going. All right. And so the chicken and the chicken halal, that was smell, that was smell and taste. And then I actually had a quick story with Caleb and his professor, when the professor put down his coffee and said, fix that. That was a deliberate move by me, because who tasted tea? Who was eating cotton candy when I said that? None of you. Everyone smelled coffee. And if you don't like coffee, you might have like, ugh. Or, you've never had coffee. You probably have an idea of what it smells like, though. And so I got you again. I got your neurotransmitters ignited to keep you engaged. All right. So I love sound, and I love taste and smell when you're delivering a story, because it's so engaging to the mind moving. Feelings and emotions, you could feel, I don't know, with Dr. Noor, and you're going to see with Jamie's story next. Can you feel how she felt by the way she delivered it? Like when she said, I missed it. I missed it by one question. Who thought, let's have a happy dance? Or who felt or related to their own shortcomings on something that they really wanted? Again, chime in on the chat. Let us know what you're thinking about that. And the thoughts are your inner thoughts, and they're really fun to weave in as well, because it's sort of like, I tell a lot of people, you're moving in and out of being the narrator of your own story and stepping into the scenes. And when the inciting event happens, it's really natural for the audience to be thinking, literally, what were you thinking when that happened? So you give it to them. You give it to them, because if you don't give it to them, they might be wondering. And there's something in the book that we call the wonder-wander effect. And it's a very, very important element to learning storytelling. And it's basically what not to do. And so things in this realm might be, you use a word that people don't all know. and they don't know what it means. So they're wondering what it means. And now they're wandering away from listening to you because they're wondering if they're the only one that doesn't know what that big word meant. Right. Or you are not letting them know how you felt when the inciting event happens. You just moved on to the next scene. They're going to be like, was she going crazy when that happened? You know, they stop listening to you. So the wonder wander effect is really, really important to understand. I joke that my team, because I have 6 coaches that teach us, we call ourselves the wonder wander cops. We're constantly looking for those moments where you were too vague, or it got too confusing, or you had way too many details in there, and it needed to be edited down because I was getting tired. Another example of storytelling where you can cause the wonder wander or almost mental exhaustion is having too many characters at once. Because what happens is every time you introduce a character in your story to us, we imagine that character, right? And they're sitting in our head. And if you never bring that character back, we're going to be wondering, why did you bring them up? Because I've been babysitting them in my head. And now you've got like, because you'll hear people will sometimes say, so I was at this party and my best friend was throwing it for her husband, and his best friend came over with his wife, and that was their second marriage. And then they had their 3 kids. They were all running around. Can you keep track of that? And are those details necessary? In the early phases of your writing and your exploration of your own story now, trying to move it into a mind movie, you're going to have that. You're going to have a lot of that. And we call it weed whacking. So you got to look at it and go, okay, that did happen, but I do have artistic liberty when I'm telling a story. As long as it's based on truth, you can cut people out if they don't really serve the story. Ask my sister. I've told stories where I'm in this nursing home. My grandmother is on her deathbed. My father's at her feet. He's crying. He's her only son. And my sister's sitting across the room. And I chose that moment to confess that I had not paid back this loan that my grandparents had given me, and I hadn't told my dad about it. Okay. So the scenes between me, my dad, and my grandmother, Sheila did nothing. So no one even knows that she's in the story when I typically tell it. She's just been edited out. She didn't say anything. So I just chose to edit her out. So keep that in mind. Just keep the characters that are making the thing move in there. If you do have a group of people in your story, kind of try to treat them maybe like a Greek chorus, that you just make them a giant they, and they're all there with you, but you don't have to point out every single person. It just becomes exhausting, and it just doesn't matter. It's like kind of minutia in your story. And what can happen then is your audience gets annoyed and they get tired. So what we don't want is that. We want you to be compelling. We want you to be people leaning in, and you can do this all day long and do it properly. Watch how things will change, with the way people are receiving your communication. Okay. So we're going to now move to our Jamie Robb, who we're going to play her video. But before we did this, we asked Jamie, what did you learn? And this is what she said when we were working in Q1 together, that storytelling at its core is about making connections to yourself and your own experiences and to others. I've learned to become a better communicator, both professionally and personally, by becoming more engaging, descriptive, and clear. That's our Jamie. So, gold star from Story Fruition. That one. Okay. So I am going to now play her. I hope that it goes in full screen, Jamie. I think I know why Dr. Newers didn't, but we'll see. Okay. So here's Jamie Robb with My Favorite Cousin, Ryan. Okay, our final storyteller, last but certainly not least at all. Can you hear it? We have Jamie Robb. And again, I've had the opportunity to work with Jamie quite a bit over the last 8 weeks, not just in private sessions, but also just running the program and getting things done. So she's just fabulous. This story came out very early. This one came out, I think, in Open Mic 1, didn't it? Jamie, I think it did.
Yeah. Yep. I think that was one. Yeah.
Okay, so she's been working on this for a while, and the story is called My Favorite Cousin Ryan. And I want you to watch in this particular story the time travel work that she does in this. Okay, so let's give the mic and the stage to Jamie Robb.
I'm 10 years old and I'm with my favorite cousin, Ryan. He's 16. We're sitting at the kitchen table and there's coloring books, marker caps strewn out everywhere. The scent of waxy crayons and Play-Doh fills the room. He just made the ugliest ball of gray by mushing together all the colors of Play-Doh that we had. He hands me crayons to color a picture of Thomas the Train. He picks blue and then red, and I'm going to work and I'm making a masterpiece. I hold up the picture. You like it? I don't expect an answer. Ryan doesn't talk. He likes what he sees and he lets out his happy squeal and he shakes his hands. His squeal is so high-pitched, I'm sure a dog could hear it 3 miles away. He takes the paper from me, already getting chocolate milk stains on it. I glance over at my Aunt Jill. She's actually relaxed, finally sitting down for the first time today. It's impossible to get a break without someone else there to color with Ryan. Ryan and his mom, my Aunt Jill, had become regulars at his pediatrician's office by the time he was 2. Ryan wasn't developing the way that he should have. He wasn't speaking and couldn't get that right balance to walk. Ryan also started to have seizures and his heart wasn't developed properly. After a few years, in what felt like a million tests, Dr. K walks in the exam room. I know you've been through a lot, Jill, but we finally have an answer. Ryan was born with Angelman syndrome. It's a genetic, very rare neurological condition that causes intellectual and developmental disabilities. As Ryan got older, his body grew up, but his mind stayed about 3 years old. He was in and out of the hospital constantly. I would walk with my mom down the halls of Children's Hospital to see him. There's bright murals of forests and bunnies on the walls, but all I can see is that dull, gray ball of Play-Doh. My aunt represents 1 in 20,000 families in situations like this, and the stress is immeasurable. I'm 12 years old on a cloudy day in May. I just got home from the 8th grade, and I'm ready to hear my mom say, "Hey, honey, how was your day?" But she's crying. Her eyes are puffy. "What's wrong, Mom?" "Honey, sit down. I have something I need to tell you." What is it, Mom? What happened?" She sits down next to me on the green couch. Her cold, shaking hands take mine. "Your cousin Ryan." "Yeah, what about him?" "He died this morning." "What? How?" "He had a heart attack." I froze. All the color in the world washed away. I didn't know what to think, what to say. She gives me the kind of hug that only a mom can. I don't understand. I just saw him the other day. My coloring buddy's gone? I'm 21 years old, and I'm in my junior year of undergrad at Wayne State University in Detroit. I've been majoring in pre-med for the past 3 years because I saw the impact that a good doctor, like Dr. K, can make while Ryan was always in the hospital. I was good at it too, until I met my nemesis, organic chemistry. I'd sit in the hard lecture hall seats, doodling in my notebook, my mind anywhere else. The professor at the front of the classroom, womp womp, sodium chloride, womp womp. Oh, I don't care about sodium chloride. You're so boring. Get me out of here. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. That is when I realized I don't want to be a doctor. I still care about people's health, but I need something different than medicine. After feeling that defeat of organic chemistry, I flipped through my university's brochure of new majors and I saw something called public health. All right, what does that entail? Public health is the science of protecting and improving the health of people and their communities. The description read, create systemic change. With medicine, I could have helped individuals like Ryan. But with public health, I can help Aunt Jill and the thousands of families like her. That could be exactly what I'm looking for. It's worth a shot. The next day, I changed my major and I never looked back. I start my first job after graduating with my bachelor's in public health. I'm a supports coordinator for children with autism, helping parents to access the same services that Ryan needed. Every day, I hear parents describe the same feelings that Aunt Jill felt. A mom, I'm exhausted. A dad, I just need a couple hours. I can't even get to the grocery store for us. A sibling, I always have to babysit. There are many services for children with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but they can be really hard to access. Without the right insurance, it's expensive and there can be really long wait lists. Not to mention, it's hard to even understand what half of these things are. ABA, OT, CLS, ADLs. Health literacy in the community mental health world is a challenge in itself. Parents basically need to learn a whole new vocabulary just to figure out how to help their child. So I went back to school and I got my master's degree in public health because I so deeply wanted to continue helping communities and families like Aunt Jill get the things they need to be happy and healthy. Today, I proudly work at the Snohomish County Health Department. I work to advance health literacy, helping organizations and providers to better communicate health information to the communities we serve. I often think back on the challenges that Ryan and Aunt Jill faced in getting services and healthcare, and of the thousands of families that would benefit from just having health information explained to them in a way that they can understand. By doing this work, I pay tribute to my favorite coloring buddy, Ryan, bringing the color back to a world full of gray.
Let's unmic and give it up for Jamie Robb. You guys, Jamie, oh, wow. Okay, so Jamie, can you unmic? Let's have a little, let's pin Jamie up here. I don't know if we can pin me too. But also I can finally see the chat. Throw some questions out if you want to ask Jamie, but I would love to start with a question for you, Jamie. When we were, what was during our journey as we were finding scene by scene and really sculpting this story, what were the moments for you where the light bulb went on about the importance of this story and how to tell it?
Yeah, I think it was when I kind of put the dots together and how Ryan impacted like my journey. Because until you prompted me to like think about why I do what I do, I didn't really make the connection like that prior. So it was kind of it was a really great like healing experience for me too, like how you talked about the wound story turning into a scar story and how that can help you along. It was really nice and helpful to like kind of reflect back on that and think about my family in that way. In regards to the storytelling, I really found it impactful, even in that first scene when we were coloring and playing with Play-Doh at the kitchen table. I remember you asked me, what did you like to do with Ryan? And that was the first thing that came to mind. And I just wrote out and described exactly what I saw us doing. And it turned out to be really powerful. So I was really glad about that.
Beautiful. And I'm going to point out that you used what we call in storytelling breadcrumbs in ways, and she also had a thread. She had color coming throughout, you know. So she said, so when Ryan makes the ball of gray of Play-Doh, okay, who smelled Play-Doh? Who knows that gray ball? We've all probably seen it. And then she brings it back when she's looking at the children's hospitals, because your first version was, I'm walking down the drab walls of children's, and I'm like, I've been to children's, the walls are really happy, but how are you feeling? And that's when she got back, I feel like that ball of gray Play-Doh. And then you closed with bringing the color back into the world. So that we had this really nice little streaming metaphor coming through, and good job. Dialogue, and also just some notes, you know, you were someone who has not had any theater.
No, I've never worked in acting, theater, nothing.
How did that feel for you? And what'd you all think about her acting?
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. It was different for me. I know, you know, Melissa, it took a few times for me to like get there and put that into it, because it was just so foreign to me. At first, I wrote the story out when I was like talking to my mom, when she told me that Ryan passed. And I was putting in a lot of like, she said this, and then my mom told me this. And I would say that in the story. And then Melissa said, well, what if you took out the parts where you're saying she said, she told me, and you just say it just like your mom's telling you. And I think that like just changed it altogether and really made it very impactful.
That's the difference between showing us and not just telling us, right? And it's very common for the first way that you did it. So common, we see it all day long. But that's also when you're telling a really powerful story of Jamie being a narrator and then stepping into the scene. Who was sitting on that couch with her mom? I mean, I felt like I was sitting right on the couch quietly. I was like, this is, you know, I almost started to cry, and I've heard this story several times, but you were so descriptive. But the fact that you don't have acting background, and you pushed yourself to try it, made such a big difference. I was glowing with pride, still am with you. But I want to talk about that with the group, because if Jamie can do it, right, so can you. So can you. But you have to put the work in if you really want to elevate this level of communication. And again, you're not going to be telling a story that long to people all day long. Sometimes your stories are 30 seconds, but you can still do dialogue. You can still create characters with relationships and show us where you are in life. Crow happens all the time. If you miss any of those elements, the Wonder Wanderer starts to get into gear. And so the fastest way to do it is to step into that scene and have your characters be clearly defined and get them to talk. Would you agree that it helps?
Absolutely. That it makes all the difference too. Even watching, I have to admit, after we did the showcase, I never watched the video back because I was so nervous to like watch myself. So that was the first time me watching the story back. Man, I got choked up. It's powerful to watch back. So yeah, I'm really glad about that opportunity today. So thank you all for listening to my story.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing it, and also the bravery, because I know that the couch scene with your mom, we had to dig in there, and I had to be really careful, because that was the inciting event of this trauma. She was just having a normal day, expecting her mom to say, "Hi, honey," and I knew you had really explored it safely, but you brought in things in the next rehearsal where you were like, it's a green couch and her hands are cold and they're shaking. And she hugged me like only a mom can. That all came from you. That all came from you. And my hands got cold. I started kind of shaking a little bit listening to you. And I am a mom. So I was like, yeah, we do give good mom hugs.
Yeah.
Of course we hug you. All right. Well, I thank you. Does anyone have a question for Jamie? We can unmic right now. We have time. We're going to see one more story after this and then just kind of wrap. But does anyone have a question for Jamie or any of this work so far? And it's okay if you don't, but I don't want to speed through.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to point out, like, my favorite part when she walked in and she went into the dialogue of what her mom was saying and what she was saying. It was weird because her face went very like mature and stern, and then like very playful and youthful when she was talking as herself as an 8th grader. And I just thought that was super impactful.
Oh, thank you, Erin. I appreciate it.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thanks.
She was stepping into the characters. So that's what I mean by stepping into the scene, is that she became her mother. And then she had to go back and be her. She became the professor. Womp womp. God, you're so boring me. You know, she was stepping into several different characters as she was time traveling. Also, did you notice the pausing that she did? The pausing was very, very deliberate, you know, especially when we were shifting gears. I always say you want to shift, like when you're time traveling, you want to shift those gears so that we know that some time has just passed. But she also used the pausing when she was getting the news about Ryan. Very, very, very impactful. And pausing is really important because this was an intense story. And oxytocin's flying. And that pause allows the audience to, one, get a little moment of relief to absorb everything that we've just heard. We almost the pause can allow us to catch up and get a breath before the storyteller keeps going on and moves on to the next thing. So those were also things that we worked on in the last quarter. So Jamie, just really great job. Okay. Does anyone else have anything else to say? Because I'm going to go back and share my screen real quick because we got another story. Hang on. Let's do the share screen. Share some. Okay, can you see it? Come on, Jamie. Okay. Yes, thumbs up. Thank you. Okay. So some of you right now might be thinking about your own story and thinking, I could tell this story and make change for more people. All right. And that's a keynote. All right. We build and construct a lot of keynotes here at Story Fruition. And with that, you have visuals. And they're very, very important. If you've noticed, we've been very deliberate on whatever visuals we've been showing you all day today. Okay. And so this next story is actually one that I've delivered. It's a keynote. It's only 5 minutes. It's with Ignite Seattle. If any of you have ever been to it, it's a complete blast. And it's an opportunity. You can tell a story about anything, but you have a message and you have about 800 people at Town Hall in Seattle listening to you. It sells out. You get 5 minutes and you get 20 slides that rotate automatically every 15 seconds. There is no clicking. So you have to know it. And it's really fun. It's like a little game you have to do. But the story that you're going to hear from me is actually my journey with obsessive compulsive disorder and how it affected my family. And the reason why I wanted to tell this story was I was tired, still am today. I get tired when people make flippant jokes about OCD. Okay. I'm ashamed to say that I did this too. I used to make like jokes about Tourette's. I used to be like, I've got humorous Tourette's. I'll say what people are thinking. And now that I know what it is, I'm like, that is awful. And I don't ever want to do that again. I want to be respectful. But most of us, we're not aware. It's just kind of ignorance. And we can become very insensitive. But if you have OCD or if you know someone with OCD, you're going to find out from this next story what it's really like. Okay. So watch the visuals. The visuals are to support what I'm saying and not upstage me. All right. We want them to support. Also, the visuals are when you're driving away and you've just heard this talk and it resonated with you, what visuals come up in your mind? What are the ones that will stick with you? Watch for transformation and all the stuff that we've been talking about. Okay, so here we go.
I'm 13 years old and I'm washing my hands for the 20th time. I've checked the lights in the oven at least a dozen times because I've been swearing at God all day and I'm scared something bad is going to happen. I am an undiagnosed obsessive compulsion disordered patient, and I am going to struggle with this well into my 20s. And now my daughter, that same OCD monster that wormed its way into my thoughts, is now worming itself into hers, and she is down. And we have tried everything for years, and nothing's working. And there were times that not only did we feel helpless, but we felt hopeless. OCD affects about 1% of the population. That's, in America, 3.2 million people who suffer from this. There's probably a dozen people in this room who understand what I'm talking about. And some people think it's funny. They're like, oh, you have OCD? Will you come over and clean my house? No. These thoughts are intrusive and they're scary. They're about death and destruction and self-harm or harm to others. And the compulsions or the rituals are designed to stop them. So counting and chanting and hoarding and cleaning, they're all designed to stop it. But we finally found out that Children's Hospital has a program for teens with extreme levels of OCD. It meets 4 days a week, 3 hours a day, and then 2 hours every day with homework. And when you get there, they tell you right away, hey, okay, you're gonna be riding a wave, and thoughts are not actions. And when OCD says to do something, you do the opposite. And you're gonna become best friends with your OCD detective. We're like, okay. And then they'd ask you, when we do an exposure, tell us what your SUDs are. If it's okay and cool, you can do it with a 1, that's great. But if it's gonna make your head blow off, that's a 10, you gotta let us know. And so right away, we started with teeth brushing because she had a fear of chemicals and death, so that had become an issue. It was not happening. And so right away, she's a 10. And then she's an 8. And then a 7. And by the end of the first week, she is brushing her teeth twice a day for homework. And then as she gets stronger, they just put a bottle of chemicals next to her, and she's like, 10, 10, 10, 6, 5, and it got better. And then she got stronger, and while she's brushing her teeth, now they're like, psh, psh, psh. She's like, 10, 10! And she's noticing that no one is dying. So maybe OCD lies? And then they spray her hands. And they put Doritos in them, and they say, eat. What? Eat. So she does, and then we all start eating out of her phalanges of death. And on the ride home, she wasn't at a 10, she was at a 10,000. And she wailed, that kind of guttural cry that I used to, you know, the kind that comes up from your toes, and as it's coming up, it's scraping off years of tar, of self-doubt and fears because you're just so sick of arguing with it. But I can't say anything. They've taught me that every time I reassure her and I say, baby, it's okay, no one's gonna die, you're fine, I'm throwing a bone to her OCD monster. So I just have to sit there with her and ride that wave while she's negotiating with her OCD detective. And it's telling her, you gotta dump this toxic friend. It's lying to you, and we've shown you over and over again, and you gotta get rid of it. But like any toxic friend, it fights back. It says, oh, you don't mean that. No, we do everything together. I built you. Without me, you'd be nothing. So shut up and count. Because if you don't count, there will be a school shooting or a plane crash, or you or someone you love will die. So shut up and count. She stares at the bag of chips because she's got to eat them again without washing her hands. And she rips that bag open and she says, screw you, OCD. And that's when I knew she was gonna make it, that she'd turn the corner, that finally we have some tools that can help us and her. And we still have to do exposure work. It's not over, it's an ongoing thing to manage, but she has it. And that kid that I saw strapped down and couldn't move in April is now standing strong and facing every fear she's ever had, because now she is an OCD warrior. Thank you.
Okay. So that's a keynote with visuals. Any questions or comments on something like that? And does that resonate with any of you on a potential for your own message? And you can put it in the chat, or if you want to reach out and let us know. It's very powerful to be able to edutain educate, edutain your audience, because like I said, I wanted people to stop the jokes. And when I was done, this woman walks up to me and she says, I work in HR at Microsoft, and I will never tell an OCD joke again. And I did not prompt her. I was just like, oh my God. And then another woman walked up to me and said, I finally understand my sister. I used to resent her so much, but now I know what was going on in her head. And so that's the power of taking something traumatic and crafting it into a message where the masses can hear it and can hopefully heal from it on their own. And like Jamie said, it was healing for me as well, and for Maisie. And she's doing great, by the way. Just want you to know, she's 20, almost 21, and she's studying musical theater, and she still has to deal with it though. That's a fact, but mine went away at about 25, but it's a torturous mental illness. Anything before I move on to the next thing? All right. So you can write this down, take a couple minutes to think about this, but what blossomed within you with your own story of resilience? What I'm trying to do is trying to help you find that gold. If the trauma had not happened, you'd be different. But that trauma happened. What did you learn about yourself? And just write it down. Oftentimes what we're doing with clients is we just say, turn on a timer for 5 minutes, and you can do this tonight, and write it down. What did you learn about yourself? It changed Jamie's career. I like that picture too. And you'll work on that, okay? Does anyone want to share? It's okay if you don't, though. But I just want you to know that whenever a story fruition workshop or event is happening and we do ask questions like that, it's a safe space, okay? There's no wrong answer. There's no judgment. There's only support, because we're all human beings trying to figure out this life thing that we're in, right? And it's the storytelling that can help us all connect, right? Connect together. So it can be quite beautiful. I think I get goosebumps 80% of the day when I'm working with clients. Okay. All right. Do we have Emily, my community manager? Do we have any questions out there that have come in through the chat? Or does
Lots
anyone
of
have
great
a mic?
comments. Somebody asking if the recording can be emailed to them.
This recording?
Yes.
Yes. We're going to clean it up a little bit, but we'll make it nice. Yes, we will send that out. The deck too, it sounds like people wanted.
Yes.
Done and done.
Awesome. No other questions saved in here, just
Okay.
lots of reflections and comments on the powerful stories, but please feel free to put any questions in the chat, or unmute if you'd like to ask a question. Jean said this was a wonderful offering. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jean. Awesome. Okay. No pressure. We just always want to check in with you. But I do have a request. We do these a lot, and they're very important when we get feedback. And so this is a survey. And if you could take a picture, or the link, this one here, this is a quick survey, I promise. It's just like 5 questions that we ask you really quickly. Like, was it, engaging? Was it inspiring? And you can tell us what we feel. It helps us improve. All right. We really do appreciate it. And we have a gift right away from you if you do it. This is if some of you already have it, they're like, oh, here comes Melissa with her workbook. Well, you can pass it to someone too, But here's your workbook, and it's filled with story prompts. Now, most of these are kind of businessy, so you create it, well, not really. A time you royally messed up, you know, there's a story prompt, and all you want to do is just write that time, like, I forgot it was my wedding day. You know, that might be a moment. You're not going to really write too much, but as you go deeper into the workbook, that's when there's just full pages for you to set that timer for 5 minutes and then let that story come out. So your prompts are there to start to nudge out the stories that want to come out. So I always say, don't fight it. Don't fight it, and write as freely as you can, because no, first off, it's your draft. It's no one else's. And it doesn't matter if there's spelling errors. It doesn't matter even if it meanders, but just allow it to go. Don't try to control it. Just let it out. I've actually had stories come out so clearly that I didn't even have to adjust them. But many times it takes me a few iterations before I'm ready for public consumption on a story. But this is how it starts. It starts with story prompts. So that would be our thank you gift for you giving us a review and survey. Much appreciated. Okay, so does everyone have the talk.ac/Melissa Reeves? Okay, because I have some free resources. Continue. There's more free gifts from Story Fruition. We do on our website. So there's 2 places that you could go, storyfruition.com, and we do have like free downloads, like storytelling tips. You can get that map. You can actually get the hero's journey map. You'll get the workbook. But then if you would just want to watch a lot of stories, you can go to our YouTube, okay? And on our YouTube, we have a lot of our Snohomish County and Letty and all the organizations that we've been working with. They told stories last year, last spring. And so we have them on the site. So if you want to see more public health oriented nonprofit stories, go to our YouTube channel. And then also, Melanin Stories Matter is actually a show that I started during quarantine to be my way of protesting the inequities that go on in the world, like what once George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery went on. I couldn't just sit there. So we created a storytelling show, and it was only Black, Indigenous, and people of color who were the storytellers. And then we joke that I was the white element in the room, but the audience was for us to hear about moments of racism, inequities, all of that, for us to wake up a little bit more. So if you're interested in any of that content, Melanin Stories Matter is on YouTube, and we got a lot of attention. I plan on bringing it back. I'm planning also bringing Melanin Leaders Matter to the world. So again, if anyone has questions about that or interest in that, you know, you can email me at melissa@storyfruition.com. Stay tuned, and you can get on our newsletter and we can talk about that stuff too. So there's my contact. There's my contact. I hope that this was an enjoyable event for you. Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Jamie and Sue. And I haven't seen Gift's name, but I'm saying Gift, who is part of this, for your encouragement for us to put this together and highlight, especially Jamie. Good work, Jamie.
Thank you, Melissa and Jamie. It's been a pleasure having you speak at the ACES Quarterly. This has been fantastic.
My pleasure. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I have some deliverables to you. And I can leave. Do you guys, you have like 12 minutes. I know this is your meeting. Do you want me to just scram? Oh, wait, I can't. No, you're co-host. I can scram.
Yeah, you're free to go, and we will excuse everybody else if they don't have any further questions, and give you
Okay,
back
so-
a little time in your day.
Yay.
Thank you all for spending the afternoon with us.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'll stay on real quick if you want to, Em. And we can probably stop recording. I can probably do that.